Hello, viewers and my esteemed subscribers. I welcome all of you to today's session of Pradipta's Musing.
Hariharaya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Nama Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama.
So today I have thought about sharing a few facts about the emblem of Ramakrishna Math and Mission. We all know that the emblem of Ramakrishna Math and Mission has been designed by none other than Swami Vivekananda. And this is the most unique emblem of any spiritual organization ever. And it bears a beautiful message of harmony of all the paths of yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and Raja Yoga. There are different symbols symbolizing all these paths of yoga along with the swan or the grand swan, which is also known as Paramhansa, embedded in between all the symbols as the main feature rather. I will later on discuss the topic of Paramhansa, what the word Paramhansa means and who is exactly called a Paramhansa. Let us first discuss about the emblem of Ramakrishna Math and Mission designed by Swami Vivekananda. And in his own words, I will read out the significance of this emblem. The wavy waters in the picture are symbolic of karma, the lotus of bhakti and the rising sun of jnana. The encircling serpent is indicative of Raja Yoga and the awakened Kundalini Shakti, while the swan in the picture stands for Paramatman, the Supreme Self. This is what Swami Vivekananda has explained in his own words about the emblem of Ramakrishna Math and Mission, which he has designed himself. Now we all know what is bhakti. Bhakti is devotion. It is more than devotion. It is a path of yoga which helps a devotee to unite with the Paramatmana. This is the path which helps the little self to combine, to be in union with the higher self. The symbol of bhakti is lotus. That is why we offer lotus to all the gods and goddesses, whomever we worship. The rising sun is the symbol of jnana. Just as light dispels all sorts of darkness, similarly, jnana is the sun. It is the light, the ever effulgent light which dispels the darkness of ignorance. So sun has been used as the symbol of Jnana Yoga. The encircling serpent, it is the indicative of Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is synonymous with Ashtanga Yoga also, which has been always considered as a path to reach the ultimate, the absolute. Raja Yoga was devised by the great Yoga Shastra exponent Patanjali, and there are eightfold paths of Raja Yoga, which when practiced leads to union with the higher self. The Kundalini Shakti is the symbol of the awakened spiral energy centers of the body, the 7 chakras of the body, which look like the form of a serpent by a yogi. A yogi conceives of the Kundalini Shakti as a sleeping serpent with 7 chakras, like 7 spirals, and it has a hood also when it is awakened. So the hooded serpent is the symbolic awakened Kundalini Shakti, which can be awakened by the practice of Raja Yoga or the path of Ashtanga Yoga. Now, as about the wavy waters are symbolic of Karma Yoga. Now, the karma is always a moving phenomenon. Anything stagnant is symbolic of akarma, and karma is symbolized by moving waters. So, rippled waters have been used to symbolize karma in the emblem of Ramakrishna Math and Mission. Karma Yoga is ever dynamic. To be always engaged in action is about being engaged in Karma Yoga without expectation of any fruits of the actions. And lastly, the swan, which stands for the Supreme Self, the Paramatmana, and about Paramhansa. What we all know that a swan can separate between milk and water when it is provided with a bowl of mixture of milk and water. Like a swan, the Paramhansa or the person with an awakened higher self can separate between the bliss of supreme consciousness from a mixture of worldly sense enjoyments. The world of sense enjoyments remain mixed up with the Satchitananda or the supreme bliss of the eternal consciousness. A Paramhansa knows how to separate both and how to remain always in a state of supreme bliss, being one with the Supreme Self. I would like to read out from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna who and what a Paramhansa is. In his own words, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna contains these sayings of the Master Sri Ramakrishna as documented in his daily diary by Sri Mahendranath Gupta, who is the author of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and was an illustrious householder disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. Master to the devotees. The Paramhansa is like a 5-year-old child. He sees everything filled with consciousness. At one time, I was staying at Kamarpukur when Shivram was 4 or 5 years old. Shivram was a nephew of the master. One day he was trying to catch grasshoppers near the pond. The leaves were moving. To stop their rustling, he said to the leaves, "Hush, hush, I want to catch a grasshopper." Another day it was stormy. It rained hard. Shivram was with me inside the house. There were flashes of lightning. He wanted to open the door and go out. I scolded him and stopped him, but still he peeped out now and then. When he saw the lightning, he exclaimed, "There, uncle, they are striking matches again." The Paramhansa is like a child. He cannot distinguish between a stranger and a relative. He isn't particular about worldly relationships. One day Shivram said to me, "Uncle, are you my father's brother or his brother-in-law?" The Paramhansa is like a child. He doesn't keep any track of his whereabouts. He sees everything as Brahman. He is indifferent to his own movements. Shivram went to Hriday's house to see the Durga Puja. Hriday, he is also a relative of the master Sri Ramakrishna, who used to take care of Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar temple. He slipped out of the house and wandered away. A passerby saw the child, who was then only 4 years old, and asked, "Where do you come from?" He could not say much. He only said the word hut. He was speaking of the big hut in which the image of the Divine Mother was being worshipped. The stranger asked him, "Father, whom are you living with?" He only said the word brother. Sometimes the Paramhansa behaves like a madman. A few days after the dedication of the temple at Dakshineshwar, a madman came there who was really a sage endowed with the knowledge of Brahman. He had a bamboo twig in one hand and a potted mango plant in the other, and was wearing torn shoes. He didn't follow any social conventions. After bathing in the Ganges, he didn't perform any religious rites. He ate something that he carried in a corner of his wearing cloth. Then he entered the Kali temple and chanted hymns to the deity. The temple seemed to tremble. Halodhari was then in the shrine. He was the appointed priest of the Vishnu temple associated with the Dkshineshwar Kali temple. The madman wasn't allowed to eat at the guest house, but he paid no attention to this sight. He searched for food in the rubbish heap where the dogs were eating crumbs from the discarded leaf plates. Now and then he pushed the dogs aside to get his crumbs. The dogs didn't mind either. Halodhari followed him and asked, "Who are you? Are you a perfect knower of Brahman?" The madman whispered, "Shh, yes, I am a perfect knower of Brahman." My heart began to palpitate as Halodhari told me about it. I clung to Hriday. I said to the Divine Mother, "Mother, shall I too have to pass through such a state?" We all went to see the madman. He spoke words of great wisdom to us, but behaved like a madman before others. Halodhari followed him a great way when he left the garden. After passing the gate, he said to Halodhari, "What else shall I say to you? When you no longer make any distinction between the water of this pool and the water of the Ganges, then you may know that you have perfect knowledge." Saying this, he walked rapidly away. So, a Paramhansa can behave like a child or like a madman, but a Paramhansa has infinite belief, unflinching faith in the divine self, in the Paramatman, and is a reflection of the Paramatman. He knows how to separate the supreme bliss of eternal consciousness from the world of sense enjoyments. For him, the water of a Nala as well as that of Ganges are of same purity. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.